My name is Charlene Sullivan. I live in the Rouyn-Noranda area in Abitibi-Témiscamingue, and I'm the Executive Director at Neighbours Regional Association. So Neighbours' main mandate is to improve the quality of life of all English-speaking Quebecers in the Abitibi-Témiscamingue region. So it can be anything from, lobbying for their right to access in services in English, or it could be entertainment, helping them with different new initiatives they're trying to get off the ground.
My name is Jessica Nestra. I live in Rouyn-Noranda, Quebec. I've lived here my whole life, and I work at Neighbours Regional Association of Abitibi-Témiscamingue. I am the Public Relations Manager, and I can really do anything from translating to being out in the public eye. I really try to focus on bringing in different partners and having our name out there.
Changed. And so that's what these arrows mean. This is a change. Yes, Anita. My name is Sue Hamilton. I live in Rouyn-Noranda, Quebec. I've been here for about 21 years and I teach at Noranda School. I teach mainly secondary 1 and 2, and I teach history, geography, math, science, English. My husband and I, who both teach here at the school, came here as unilingual Anglophones. I can function in the community, but not enough to really socialize and develop friendships. So I depend on the English community for that sense of home, that sense of belonging.
My name is Amy Barker. I'm the principal at Noranda School with the Western Quebec School Board. I'm not from here. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, but I've lived here for 25 years. I've integrated well in the community, French or English. I am bilingual. My husband is French. We've raised our kids to be bilingual, so I think that I have the best of both worlds, so I'm a very lucky person.
My name is Brahim Al-Fadil. I live in Rouyn-Noranda, and we arrived from Vancouver to Rouyn-Noranda in 2020 because in Vancouver the cost of living is very high compared to Quebec. I applied for a professor position, and I'm bilingual. I can speak English and French and other languages like kind of Arabic or Berber, for example. But my kids, they identify as English speaking, especially my youngest, who is still struggling to speak French.
My name is Melissa Villela. I'm a researcher here at the Université du Québec en Abitibi-Témiscamingue in the Department of Education. I'm a professor of school administration, and my areas of specialization in particular are minority language education, challenges and issues, as well as I do work on bilingual family language policy, also the inclusion of Black students in minoritized contexts. I am technically a minority francophone from Ontario living in Quebec. My grandparents on my mom's side are francophone, and on my dad's side, they're Italian. I look at ways of bringing theory and practice together and using case studies, whether they come from research or experience, to bring people further and show what the pertinence of research is in terms of decision-making.
Something something that I think a lot of people don't realize about the region is that Rouyn-Noranda and Val-d'Or are substantial sized communities. I think we're up to about 40,000 in Rouyn-Noranda. People don't realize is that we are quite self-sufficient. It's not necessary that we need to leave our cities and our region always to receive services or amenities or things like that.
So here in Rouyn-Noranda, we do not have any English media. We don't have any radio. If you want to listen to English radio, it's going to be CBC Montreal or Quebec AM. We don't have any TV news stations either. You'll listen to TVA Nouvelle, which is in French, and even a newspaper. We don't even have that here. And if you want any English media, it's all going to be things in the Montreal or Quebec region.
We're in a context where it's very Franco-dominant compared to maybe other regions like l'Outaouais, where people will often ask you if you'd like the service in French or in English. If you take a community like Rouyn-Noranda, where the majority is francophone, you're not necessarily distinguishing French speakers from English speakers.
What I think makes Noranda School special is that for better or for worse, the fact that it's a small school means that people are just more aware of the energy that they bring into the building because the ratio of students to teacher is very small.
We're a kindergarten to grade 11 school, and at the high school level, so secondary 1 through 5, we have approximately 45 students, and in secondary 1-2, there's about 19, and so we put them together as a split class. And so because of that, they're together for most subjects.
The reality of this community is that outside of these school walls, if you're not speaking English at home, you're going to have very few, if no, opportunities to speak English elsewhere.
So if I look at English minority schools, such as the Noranda School, that are geographically more distanced and do not have access to a whole bunch of institutions around to support them in English, they're a cornerstone of the English-speaking community in terms of language and cultural reproduction.
The schools are facing this decreasing of students. That means they will get less money. I come back again to say they will not have this kind of elective courses or concentrations like in other French schools. And you cannot motivate them by the traditional education. We should provide them a choice.
Pressing issues that the English-speaking community is facing right now is accessing services, either being in the health services or the education system, like maintaining our school. I know right now the school numbers have increased, but over the last 5-6 years ago, it was declining.
The bigger challenge, I think, for the English community for education is post-secondary. Right? My 3 children are all in Montreal. And so to need to move away for English education, even though they're all bilingual, they're just more comfortable to study in English.
So growing up in Rouyn-Noranda, I went to the local English school here from elementary to secondary 5. And we definitely faced some challenges. We have 3 English schools here from elementary to secondary. One here in Rouyn-Noranda, the other one is in Val-d'Or, and another one in Témiscamingue. But there's no English cégep or university. You either have to go in the Montreal region or to Ontario.
The education system for minority community is so important in creating that community hub, a place where you can develop your own skills in your mother tongue or your first official language spoken. That being said, the school faces a lot of difficulties just in the sheer numbers. The way our government works for our education system is there's so much given per head of a student that is enrolled in the school on a certain date. That's your budget for the year, no matter what happens, if you have a family of 6 that move in next week or not. And that budget is low in small schools. A child in Montreal gets the same budget as a child in Rouyn-Noranda. Yet the needs in the rural areas, in the regions, is so much, in my opinion, is higher. The school in Rouyn-Noranda doesn't even have our own bus service. We rely on the French system, and we rent or pay for our students to be able to get on the bus. It's a ball. It's a real big ball that we're trying to roll up a hill sometimes, you know.
Few student means few resources, means also few funding. It means they have less money. You know, in other French schools in the area, they have kind of elective courses. They have pool, swimming pool, for example. They have volleyball activities. They have extracurricular activities.
And I think when you have schools that are geographically more remote and you have schools that are not being serviced, we have to look outside the box. In terms even the Noranda school with going to Sec 5 and, you know, maybe having basic courses, like your required courses and less courses that are a more special interest. You know, maybe there's a possibility of working with a virtual school that already exists in another school board and complementing that with other services in town.
A challenge that I face in my job is one that every sector of education faces right now, and that's finding qualified teachers to come to my community and work in my school. So there are teacher shortages all over the province, possibly all over the country. So that's one a challenge, but the added complexity of that is that you want teachers that obviously are highly proficient in English, for student success and encouraging the English language at my school. So Université du Québec en Abitibi-Témiscamingue, they have an education program here in English as a second language. So more and more of my teaching staff come from that program because they've done their teaching degree with a focus around teaching English language. But what we're facing right now is there's very few graduates, so we're in high competition of getting those graduates to come here to Noranda School. Enriched courses like Advanced Math 5, Chemistry 5, Physics 5 are not offered in person at the school. There's an organization called Learn Quebec. They offer a very good, very successful platform throughout Quebec. So basically what it is there is an actual teacher that is giving instruction virtually. And the students are with that teacher. Then those sessions are filmed, and there's just an interface that's virtual so that they can get those credits.
I think when we talk about language reproduction and transmission, we have to keep in mind that it's more complex than just speaking the language. So students with special needs, from an equity perspective, have a right to have services in English, and some of the children will be bilingual and would need bilingual services, right? They may be able to say things in one language and not say it in the other language, or be able to do it in both. They need double the chance to be able to express themselves. Otherwise, you end up with reports that are not quite accurate of what the child's capabilities are.
I think when your child has any learning disabilities, speech, needs extra tutoring, extra care, I think go into the French system. Because for us to get a speech therapist here, we've been fighting years to be able to get one. That falls under the CIS, and the CIS provides us one who's French speaking. You cannot help an English child with a speech impairment if you're speaking French.
Some parents prefer to send their kids to French school because they see at high school level they should move outside of the city or send them to French school, so they prefer to send them to French schools from the beginning. In other school, we don't have mandatory disciplines, school subject. For example, there is no one teaching physics or chem because there is no teacher qualified to teach that. So this is why most of parents prefer to move outside of the city when their kids arrived at secondary school, secondary level.
Especially at this age, there's that social pull of going to one of the big schools, of going to one of the French schools. And do they stay at Noranda School, or do they leave and go to the French school? Honest, open conversations regularly happen in my class about that temptation to go. We're a small school, so we can't offer a basketball team. But we have an agreement with the French school that our students can go try out and play basketball at one of the French schools. Academically, we work really hard to provide everything that they need.
I want them to go into the French system just because I don't want them to grow up with the struggles that I had. I want their French to be perfect as it can be. Because when I wanted to go to Cégep, and I had tried going to the Cégep here in Rouyn-Noranda, it was impossible to pass the French courses.
A new document that came out from Statistics Canada by Lemia, where they're showing that under 3 to 5 eligible students to English language education are being enrolled in French schools in Abitibi-Témiscamingue. That's about 58%. It translates between Val-d'Or and Rouyn-Noranda to 955 students that are eligible for English language education that are not in the system. And that would be the difference between having a vibrant high school with plenty of services, an even more vibrant elementary school, and staff to go along with meeting the needs and to show a community need.
I think when we talk about our education system in the regions, it has changed since I attended the English school. There was more emphasis put on being part of the English community. We had to pass our French courses to graduate in the Quebec system. That goes without being said. But there wasn't a lot of emphasis put on being bilingual. So we really were able to develop that sense of the English community among ourselves because that's who we were. Today, I believe, and rightfully so, there's more emphasis on the children being perfectly bilingual when they come out of the English system so that they can go into the French workforce. I feel like a lot of our English students are losing that identity. They're not sure where they belong.
I always say I'm bilingual, but I've always been labeled as an Anglophone because of my education and because of my last name. I'm a Quebecer, I'm a Canadian, but I speak 2 languages.
When we speak about the English-speaking community in the regions, and especially I'll speak on behalf of my region, we don't identify different cultures. We have this very strong bond that we all speak English.
I think the changing face of education in all schools, but it's hitting English schools, maybe in particular in Quebec, is the changing diversity of our students, of our clientele. That when I talk about Noranda School, no longer is it all historic families, that we have so many newcomers, and it's nice to have that diversity of culture and see those differences. So the number of newcomers has increased quite dramatically in recent years because there's a significant demand for workers in our community of all levels, through the medical system, the restaurants, the engineers, mechanics, everything.
We're receiving drastic increases to enrollment due to the allophone sector and people that are here on temporary stay. So if there's somebody here on a work visa or a study visa, they can have temporary access for 1 to 3 years. Although the increase is not permanent, there is an increase. So even for my tiny school, there is an increase in population for people that are here on temporary work visas. So we have noticed that there's been an increase in the student population from countries where perhaps their second official language is English. So they come to Noranda School speaking English very proficiently, but often don't speak a word of French.
If I use the example of the Filipinos, most Filipinos did their education in English in the Philippines. So they just made this easy flow into the English community. But then once their families come to join them here, then they start realizing how restricted they are by different linguistic laws in the province of Quebec. So then they have to start trying to reintegrate themselves into the French community if that's where their children are going to have to go if they don't get special status. So not only are they're immigrants already and they don't have a lot of family or support here, now they want to be in one community but are being forced to go into another community.
It's tough watching that. And just these people are coming and already overwhelmed with so many new things. To navigate this complicated language system is just too much for a lot of them. We do the best we can to try to prepare them for life in Quebec. Our French teacher works so hard to try to get them from zero base level to a little bit of functioning of French. And so it's that heartbreak of watching them need to go to the French school and the fear that they have of the difficulty that they're going to have in the system, learning yet another language.
French school system is knowledge focused. The English system is student focused. It's focused around student. The French one is focused on knowledge. And when we focus on the knowledge, we ignore social and personal aspects. What matters is how do you learn and how you perform. However, in English, we take in consideration how you feel today, did you eat correctly at home, and we think, are we provided to you, for example, good atmosphere or good environment to work? We take in consideration all what surrounded the kid in learning. I remember when my youngest attended French school, he failed all subjects. And they told me he has a big learning issue. When he went to English school, he never failed any subject. So imagine he moved from 30% in French school in all subjects to 80, 90% in math, in French, in English. Even though in French, he passed his French at that time. This is why I said we don't really approach our teaching and learning in same ways. Where the school is suffering, they should not be hard. We should have our own criteria to analyze our requests, not like in Montreal where there is a lot of people. Maybe the school will close one day. It will not have enough students.
For me, I think it's very, very disappointing, extremely disappointing. I often have to have very difficult conversations with those families. You're putting people years behind because they're often having to go to adult education to complete their studies. It can be it's very challenging, very emotional, very time-consuming. That puts an extra strain on a family that's already been through sometimes very traumatic situations just to get here, because the expectation of their teenage child to be able to get a high school diploma in French with all of the other language challenges that they're facing isn't realistic. And so they moved to Ontario.
We are planning to move to Ottawa. That means divide our family, half in Ottawa and half here, for example. This is kind of what we can do if we want to provide them an educational environment, attractive environment.
The impact, you can look at statistically, it means that our graduation rates are lower because those people are considered as dropouts in our statistics, which is, in a small school like mine, has a huge impact.
And the concern for me is we're already dealing with a very small population, and we've got a school that's very small, that's trying to meet everyone's needs. And if we're not doing anything to try to keep people here in terms of youth retention, and when I'm talking about youth retention, I'm talking specifically in terms of education, how in the long term is the community going to continue to exist and continue to be vibrant? And a minority school that wants to survive has to have programs that go from parent to taught, and high school has to be attached to the elementary school, especially in regions like this. And if the parents are the rights holders, they're the ones that need to advocate to have their rights respected. And I think in terms of courses, the question needs to be asked to the parents as to what their vision is of English language education. We need textbooks that talk about English-speaking communities in Quebec. We need curriculum that talks about heritage and history of English-speaking heroes and heroines that are part of the English-speaking community.
Animals, they became sedentary. And that was the change from the Paleolithic, old Stone Age. Some people forget that English is more than a language. It's a culture. And I feel my job as an Anglophone teacher in an English school in Quebec is to help celebrate and carry on that English culture that we have.
We need to be in our community, because if Neighbours isn't here, so many people are going to isolate themselves from the rest of the world. And that is the last thing we want people to do. We want them to know that there are people fighting for them and fighting for their rights to services in English.
To me, as long as there's an English person that needs a service that we here at Neighbours or at the church can provide, I'm going to try and provide it. So being able to be a lobbyist and work on behalf of a community and improving their quality of life, and honestly, I feel like we do accomplish that here at Neighbours, it's rewarding. So I feel like when they think of us as living in a rural area, they're thinking we're all kind of like lumberjacks, that I get up every morning and I'm cutting wood to heat my house or to make my breakfast.
And my new family now is, with my spouse and my kids, they're growing up here. We've always felt like we belong. And I hope that stays, because it truly is a beautiful region.
So for the benefit of small classes, the payment is we teach more classes. But I would take those small classes any day. I love this school.